what we're seeing right now from Kirby Smart in Georgia on the recruiting trail is something he talked about the first day he was introduced to the media at Georgia in December of 2015. He said, "You have to have big grown men that need lots of depth because it's hard to get through it without having injuries." Let me read the full quote. He says, "You've got to have depth on the offensive line, especially in this conference. You have to have big, grown men that need lots of depth because it's hard to get through it without having injuries. But we want to make explosive plays on offense, which means you have to have good, skilled people." The number one thing, and then there was a scrum, what's called a scrum. I don't know if y'all know what a scrum is. Scrum is when, after the formal things are concluded, there's sometimes a gaggle or a group of reporters away from the television cameras. And one of the things that Kirby talked about at the time too was that Georgia got to get bigger, physically larger. And during Sam Pittman's time at Georgia, the head coach at Arkansas, they really did that. And you talk about really big people, Isaiah Wilson. He inherited Isaiah Wynn. He had Isaiah Wilson, Schaefer, all these guys who wound up playing in the NFL, Broderick Jones. Georgia's offensive line went from, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way towards these guys, but it went away from, David Andrews, Brendan Kublano, and John Theus, who were agile big men, who were attacking defenses with angles and sweeps and all this stuff. It made it very difficult. When you were good at that, it made it very hard for the offense, to be honest. For the defense, to be honest with you. So that was a style that Georgia was playing, and you saw when Kublano and who was on it? Kublano, Isaiah Wynn was on that first offensive line. Those guys really struggled in year one in 2016, playing the way that Georgia wanted to play with the players they had. Then they changed the style of player. They went to a larger person with explosive players on the outside. Mecole Hardman, George Pickens. I'm thinking of Ladd McConkey now, or A.D. Mitchell, fast. Arian Smith. Guys who were really fast. James Cook. Georgia's always had really fast players, but they went to the biggest thing that changed were not the skilled players. It was not the skilled players. It was the big guys, period. I mean, you talk to somebody like me who's been around the block for a while, and what's different, let me say this real quick. We're gonna run out of this promo here soon. Our 2023 preview is available to those folks who buy Double Dogs. If you buy Double Dogs, you get this free included in your packaging. So we have other specialty items. You can just click around on the landing page when you get there. But this is not a promotion that I'm going to continue forever. Take advantage of it now. I've got something else coming up that's going to be different that I think a lot of people are going to like. But take advantage of this now. You're not going to get left behind with the other stuff anyway. So as a reporter and as someone... So I started Dawg Post when I was 22, something like that. And so when I would go watch practices at Georgia, people often thought I was a student still. Well, that wasn't the case. But the first thing you do is you would go look at the offensive line. That's like day one of practice, whether you're talking about spring practice, but definitely in the fall. Day one, can you look at the offensive? Is that a SEC championship offensive line? That's the first. Don't worry about the quarterbacks because they're not going to be doing anything if they don't have an offensive line. Don't worry about the defense or the DBs, which I can't. I never know what's going on there anyway. Still, so just go straight to the offensive line, like your mom, or your dad. Or your daughter or son, they should be able to look and see, does this look like what a football team should look like? Can they stand up to Jadeveon Clowney and Melvin Ingram and, those really good Florida defenses or anything that Nick and Kirby would shove out there back in the day. If they don't look like it, if they look like they did in 15 or to some degree 16, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. That's what this is, y'all. I mean, this is not about how well can Matthew Stafford throw the football. The answer to that is really well. Or how well can Stetson run? Really well. How good is Brock Bowers? Really good. It doesn't matter if they're, like The Rock would say, it doesn't matter. All that matters is, do you have an offensive line? And Georgia over time has had very good offensive lines under Kirby Smart. You know, when you think about that first, O-line that he brought in, and the first like full legitimate class that he had in 2000, that was the 2017 class with Jake Fromm and all those guys. That was a really, really good class. That class on the offensive line was Isaiah Wilson, Andrew Thomas, Notori Johnson, didn't work out. I'm not done. I'm just scrolling down a little bit further. DeMarcus Hayes, didn't work out. Justin Schaefer, that worked out. NFL player. I mean, that's pretty good. You got a couple first-round guys in that bunch. After that, a season later, Jamari. Then you had Cade Mays. I should be doing this by position, but whatever. Warren Erickson. You say what? I think I've been the person that's been the most negative, if you want to call it that, about Warren Erickson. Man, Warren Erickson was a good player at Georgia. I mean, this guy started constantly. You don't just start there. And these guys were big people. They were, Trey Hill. I skipped Trey Hill. So it's just the way that I'm looking at this. But, these are really good players. And these are players that it matters that you get that sort of size in your system when you're playing the way that Georgia has wanted to play. And, after the national championship against Alabama, I don't have an image of it in Dawg Struction, but after the national championship against Alabama, I remember the way that Jamari was after that game. And Jamari, because I was right by, I got several images of him. I'll try to show it to you on the screen right now. See, the thing about these videos, I don't go sort of and plan them out. These are just videos that what comes into my head is what we talk about. I want to show you these images of Jamari and how sort of what's the word? Not just excited, but just happy he was. I mean, obviously after winning the national championship, of course he was happy. But these guys had worked for such a long period of time, Jamari, to get to where they were. And it was not by accident that he got on the ground and did like a snow angel deal in the confetti. There it is. This guy, I watched him play at pace. All right. This guy was a pretty good high school player. Now, he wasn't like, hey, this guy's going to be unbelievable or anything like that. He was a really good high school player. Was not unbelievable. I've seen better. But, man, he did a lot for Georgia. And he was typical of the style of guy that they got. Big. The second part's important, too. Smart. Man, and determined. Look how big he is. But he ain't heavy either. That's the other thing. I skipped Ben Cleveland. I forgot about talking about Ben Cleveland. But they redshirted Ben in 16. So they took their time in developing these guys. But it was step one for Kirby. Step one was, what do we have to do? We got to be better on the offensive line. Now, he never said that publicly because those guys were still on the scene. If you see Brendan Kublano today, Brendan Kublano does not look like he played offensive line in college. He looked like, he he was in a fraternity and like was just kind of kicking it. He looks good. Colton Houston, Jonathan, these guys have all shed weight. Matt Stinchcomb, the Stinchcomb's done a great job of all these big guys. I'm so proud of y'all. I am not making this up. I know what it's like to be big and like as a big person. I've never weighed 300, but I've not come so far from it. And it's hard, man, when you stop playing and for me, I was playing 2 sports, literally running around constantly. You can eat whatever you want. But when you stop, it's hard. And look at Jamari, though, man. I mean, this is not a mistake that this guy's had so much success in the NFL immediately. I mean, he was underdrafted, period. But these are the type of guys that marking them, they didn't have them. Now, that's on them, but they didn't have them. And there's something to be said, too. I'm not all against, David Andrews was a Husky? I don't know how to say it. David had no issues playing football, but the style that they've used has been different than what David was, or even I guess Ben Jones. Come to think of it, but David and Ben, there's those specialty positions. But again, the biggest thing, as I finish my rant, the biggest thing is that Kirby knew we got problems on this line. It's not big enough for what I want to do. He wasn't going to do the same things that Mike did. And God knows, thank God he didn't do the same things that Brian Schottenheimer did. We'd all been a heap of mess with that deal.